Deathworlder Mercenary, caught between alien crime queens and galactic chaos, reaches its explosive climax as Felix leads a daring assault on Vane's command cruiser. With assassins eliminating the bridge crew and hackers crippling vital systems, Felix's strike team breaches the vessel. They capture the mastermind who orchestrated the criminal turf war, forever shifting the balance of power across the Kepler rim. The neon lights of Nexus Prime cast long shadows across Felix's scarred face as he stepped off the transport shuttle. 8 months of brutal turf war had left the massive orbital station in a state of perpetual tension. The air recyclers hummed with a constant, low drone that most residents had learned to tune out. But Felix found oddly comforting. Through the transparent aluminum viewports, the vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly, dotted with the dim light of distant stars and the occasional flash of a ship's engines as it approached or departed. Felix adjusted the worn leather holster that housed his custom plasma pistol. The weight of the weapon was reassuring against his hip, a constant companion that had saved his life more times than he cared to count. As a human from Earth, classified as a death world due to its high gravity, varied climates, and dangerous fauna, Felix possessed natural advantages that made him particularly valuable in his line of work. Enhanced strength, superior reflexes, and heightened endurance gave him an edge that few other species could match. His arrival hadn't gone unnoticed. 3 Zilani officers in their distinctive blue-black armor approached him with purpose, mandibles clicking in agitation. The insectoid species were known for their strict adherence to rules and regulations, which made them perfect for security roles throughout the galaxy. Unfortunately, it also made them particularly annoying to deal with. "Human," the lead officer chittered, compound eyes reflecting the station's harsh lighting. "Your weapons permit appears to be expired. You will surrender your armaments immediately or face detention." Felix smiled thinly. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding." The first Zilani reached for Felix's holster. In a blur of motion that belied his muscular frame, Felix grabbed the officer's wrist, twisted, and used the alien's momentum to slam him into the second guard. As the third Zilani drew his stun baton, Felix dropped into a crouch and swept the officer's spindly legs from under him. Within seconds, all 3 officers were incapacitated, but unharmed. A display of restraint that was as impressive as the speed with which he had neutralized the threat. "Magnificent!" came a gravelly voice from behind a nearby cargo container. A short, amphibious Quillix emerged, his mottled skin glistening under the station lights. "Absolutely magnificent. They say humans are dangerous, but I've never seen anyone move like that before." Felix straightened his jacket. "And you are?" "Torvin," the amphibian replied with a slight bow. "I arrange solutions for those with problems too delicate for official channels." "A fixer," Felix translated. "Indeed," Torvin grinned, revealing rows of tiny, pointed teeth. "And I have a client, 2 clients actually, who require someone with your unique talents." Felix raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "The Shadowbane Syndicate and the Void Star Cartel have been locked in a brutal turf war for the better part of a year. Their matriarchs, Kuran and Valeth, are both formidable, but neither can gain a decisive advantage. The conflict is destabilizing the entire Kepler rim." "And what exactly am I supposed to do about it?" Torvin's gills fluttered in amusement. "Mediate." Felix barked a laugh. "You want me to broker peace between the 2 most ruthless crime families in the sector? Why would they listen to me? Because you're a neutral party. Because you're a Deathworlder who just incapacitated 3 Zilani without breaking a sweat. And because both matriarchs have authorized me to offer you this." Torvin handed over a data chip. Felix slotted it into his wrist terminal, and his eyes widened at the figure displayed. "That's just the advance," Torvin added. "Double that upon successful resolution." Felix studied the amphibian carefully. There was more to this than a simple mediation job. That much was obvious. But the money was good. Too good to refuse, especially with the prospect of his dwindling savings. "When do I start?" Torvin's gills rippled with satisfaction. "Immediately. Kuran has requested to meet you first. Her compound is in the station's eastern quadrant. I've transferred the coordinates to your terminal." As Torvin waddled away, Felix couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into something far more dangerous than a simple negotiation. But danger paid well, and staying alive in impossible situations was his specialty. The eastern quadrant of Nexus Prime was a stark contrast to the sanitized docking bay. Here, the station's infrastructure was partially exposed, with bundles of cables and pipes running along the ceiling. The air was thick with the scent of exotic spices and the low buzz of conversation in dozens of languages. Felix navigated the crowded corridors with practiced ease, his height giving him a clear view over most of the station's diverse inhabitants. The entrance to the Shadowbane compound was unmarked, distinguished only by two heavily armed guards, Taurans, with their imposing frames and bovine features. Felix approached openly, hands visible. "I'm here to see Kuran," he stated. "Torvin sent me." The guards exchanged glances before one grunted and activated his comm unit. After a brief conversation, they stepped aside, and a section of the wall slid open to reveal a hidden passage. "Straight through," the guard instructed. "No sudden movements once you're inside." The passage led to a spacious chamber, decorated with artifacts from across the galaxy. Tapestries depicting ancient battles hung beside holographic art installations that shifted and morphed in hypnotic patterns. At the center of the room, seated on an elevated platform, was Kuran. The Shadowbane matriarch was Nilarian, a species known for their empathic abilities and striking appearance. Her skin was a deep violet, almost black in the chamber's dim lighting. 6 eyes, arranged in a symmetrical pattern across her face, regarded Felix with undisguised curiosity. When she spoke, her voice carried a melodic quality that seemed to resonate on multiple frequencies. "So, you are the human mercenary I've heard so much about," she said, gesturing for him to approach. "Closer, please. I wish to sense your intentions." Felix stepped forward, aware that Nilarians could detect emotional states through subtle chemical signals. Lying to her would be pointless. "You are cautious," she observed. "Good. Caution keeps one alive in these troubled times." "I understand you're having some issues with the Void Star Cartel," Felix said, getting straight to business. Kuran's upper set of eyes narrowed. "Issues? Is that what Torvin called it? Valeth's people ambushed one of my shipments last month. 30 of my best operatives killed. Merchandise worth millions seized or destroyed." "What kind of merchandise?" Felix asked. "Medical supplies," Kuran replied smoothly. "For the outer colonies." Felix doubted that was the whole truth, but he kept his skepticism to himself. "And your response?" "Measured," she insisted. "We disabled one of their processing facilities. No casualties. It was a warning. Nothing more. Yet the conflict has escalated." Kuran rose from her seat, her slender form unfolding to reveal she was nearly as tall as Felix. "Because Valeth refuses to acknowledge her transgression. She claims my shipment was illegal contraband, that she was performing a public service." Her voice hardened. "She lies." Felix maintained a neutral expression. "I'll be meeting with her next. What would you have me convey?" "Tell her that I am willing to discuss terms for a ceasefire, but there must be compensation for my losses. And I want the names of her informants within my organization." "Anything else?" Kuran moved closer, the sweet, slightly intoxicating scent of her pheromones filling the air. "Tell her that while I prefer peace, I am fully prepared for war. My patience has limits." Felix nodded. "I'll deliver your message." As he turned to leave, Kuran added, One more thing. Human. Valeth is Syraxian. They are natural deceivers. Do not trust her silver tongue. The western quadrant of Nexus Prime housed the Void Star Cartel's operations. Unlike the Shadowbane's hidden entrance, the Void Star headquarters was prominently marked, a gleaming black structure with the cartel's starburst emblem projected above its entrance. The message was clear: we have nothing to hide. Valeth's reception was markedly different from Quran's. Instead of being led directly to the matriarch, Felix was escorted to a lavish waiting area where he was offered refreshments and asked to surrender his weapons. He declined both. After 30 minutes, a door slid open, and a tall, elegant figure entered. Valeth's Syraxian heritage was evident in her crystalline skin that seemed to shift colors with her movements, and the delicate, almost translucent frills that framed her face. Syraxians were a reptilian species, known for their longevity and adaptability. "Felix," she greeted him, her voice cool and precise. "I apologize for the wait. Running a legitimate business empire requires attention to detail." "Legitimate," Felix repeated with a hint of skepticism. "Is that how you describe the Void Star Cartel?" Valeth's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her iridescent eyes. "We provide security, transportation, and financial services to clients throughout the Kepler Rim, all properly registered and taxed, and occasional enforcement actions against rival organizations, when necessary to uphold the law," she countered smoothly. "The shipment we intercepted from the Shadowbane Syndicate contained Class 3 restricted bioweapons components disguised as medical supplies. We acted in the public interest." Felix maintained a neutral expression. "Quran tells a different story." "Of course she does." Valeth settled into a chair opposite him. "Did she also tell you about the spy network she's established in neutral colonies? Or her assassins targeting my lieutenants? She mentioned wanting the names of your informants within her organization." Valeth laughed, a crystalline sound. "So I was right. She does have a leak. How interesting. She also said she's open to discussing a ceasefire, but wants compensation for her losses." The Syraxian's frills flattened against her head, a sign of irritation. "Compensation? For illegal goods? Absurd." "Is there any middle ground here?" Felix asked. "Any basis for negotiation?" Valeth studied him thoughtfully. "Perhaps. I could consider releasing some of the confiscated cargo, the legitimate portions, as a gesture of goodwill. But I will not apologize for upholding galactic law, and I certainly won't reveal my sources." Felix nodded. "I'll convey your position." As he stood to leave, Valeth added, "One piece of advice. Mercenary. Nylarians like Quran use their empathic abilities to manipulate others. Don't let her get into your head." Felix exited the Void Star headquarters with more questions than answers. Both matriarchs seemed genuinely convinced of their righteousness, yet their stories contradicted each other in fundamental ways. Either one was lying, or both were working with incomplete information. He decided to seek out a neutral perspective before proceeding further. Administrator Quillen oversaw Nexus Prime's civilian operations and had managed to maintain a position of neutrality despite the ongoing conflict. His office was located in the station's central hub, a sterile environment of white walls and transparent displays that contrasted sharply with the chaotic character of the commercial sectors. Quillen was a Tesseran, a species evolved from avian ancestors. His feathered crest rose in surprise when Felix entered his office without an appointment. "Mr. Felix," he chirped, quickly composing himself. "To what do I owe this unexpected visit?" "Information," Felix replied, taking a seat without waiting for an invitation. "About the conflict between Shadowbane and the Void Star." Quillen's crest flattened nervously. "I maintain strict neutrality in such matters." "Which is exactly why I'm here. I need an unbiased account of what happened with Quran's intercepted shipment." The administrator hesitated, then activated his terminal. "I can show you the official incident report, but nothing more." A holographic display materialized between them, showing footage from a security drone. The video depicted a Shadowbane transport being intercepted by Void Star vessels. The ensuing firefight was brief but intense. The manifest listed medical supplies, Quillen explained, but subsequent scans detected biological compounds consistent with restricted pathogens. Was there a formal investigation? Felix asked. Attempted, but inconclusive. The evidence was contaminated during the conflict. Quillen's discomfort was evident. There have been 17 similar incidents in the past 8 months. Always the same pattern. Accusations of smuggling, followed by retaliation, followed by counter-retaliation. Felix leaned forward. 17 incidents across how many systems? 12, Quillen replied after checking his data. All within the Kepler rim. And when did these conflicts begin? All at the same time? Quillen's crest rose in thought. Now that you mention it, they did seem to escalate simultaneously about 8 months ago. Curious. I hadn't noticed that pattern before. Felix stood. One last question. Who benefits from this conflict? Who's filling the power vacuum while these two organizations tear each other apart? The administrator's eyes widened. I wouldn't know. But his nervous fidgeting suggested otherwise. Thank you for your time, Felix said, heading for the door. You've been very helpful. As Felix made his way back toward the eastern quadrant to deliver Valeth's response to Quran, the pieces began to fall into place. The simultaneous eruption of conflicts across multiple systems was too coordinated to be coincidence. Someone was playing the two crime families against each other. He was so deep in thought that he almost missed the subtle shift in the crowd behind him, a ripple of movement as several figures changed direction to match his own. Felix casually altered his path, cutting through a busy marketplace, and confirmed his suspicion. He was being followed. Rather than heading to Quran's compound, Felix ducked into a narrow side passage that led to the station's maintenance tunnels. The service corridors were dimly lit and mostly deserted, the perfect place for an ambush, but also for turning the tables on his pursuers. He counted 5 of them, 3 Taurans and 2 smaller figures he couldn't immediately identify. They were well-armed and moved with professional precision. Not common thugs, then, but trained operatives. Felix drew his plasma pistol and positioned himself at a junction where the corridor branched in 3 directions. When the first Tauran rounded the corner, Felix fired a warning shot that sizzled past the alien's head and left a glowing mark on the wall. That's close enough, Felix called out. I have no quarrel with you, but the next shot won't miss. The Tauran raised his hand slowly. We're not here to harm you, human. We have a message from our employer. And who might that be? Someone who appreciates your talents and would prefer you. Didn't involve yourself in local disputes. Felix kept his weapon trained on the Tauran. I already have an employer for this job. If yours wants to hire me afterward, they can contact me through the proper channels. Our employer is not accustomed to waiting, the Tauran replied, reaching slowly into his pocket. Felix tensed. But the alien merely produced a data chip similar to the one Torvin had given him. This contains triple what you're being paid now. All you have to do is leave Nexus Prime on the next transport. And if I refuse? The Tauran's expression hardened. Then we are authorized to ensure you cannot complete your current assignment. Felix considered his options. Taking the money and leaving would be the sensible choice. But his curiosity was piqued. And something about this entire situation felt wrong. Someone was going to considerable expense to remove him from the equation, which suggested his presence was a threat to their plans. I'll need time to consider your offer, he said, cautiously accepting the data chip. You have 6 hours, the Tauran stated before backing away, his companions following suit. Once they were gone, Felix examined the chip. It contained not only the promised payment, but also a one-way passage to the Centauri colonies, about as far from the Kepler rim as one could get without leaving civilized space altogether. Someone wanted him gone, and they were willing to pay handsomely for it. The question was, why? Felix's contemplation was interrupted by an explosion that shook the entire station. Emergency klaxons blared as the maintenance tunnel's lighting switched to red. Felix accessed a nearby terminal to check the station's status and found that the blast had occurred in the eastern quadrant, precisely where Kuran's compound was located. He sprinted through the tunnels, taking shortcuts that only someone with his intimate knowledge of station architecture would know. When he emerged near the Shadowbane compound, chaos greeted him. The entrance had been blown open, and smoke poured from the breach. Station security forces had established a perimeter, but they seemed hesitant to enter. Felix approached one of the Zalani officers, not among those he had encountered earlier. Fortunately. "What happened?" he demanded. "Unknown assailants breached the Shadowbane headquarters," the officer replied. "Multiple casualties reported. We're awaiting specialized units before proceeding inside." "Is Kuran among the casualties?" "Unknown. Communications from within have ceased." Felix made a split-second decision. "I'm going in." Before the officer could object, Felix darted past the security line and into the smoke-filled compound. The interior was in shambles, with debris scattered across the once immaculate floor. Bodies of Shadowbane guards lay where they had fallen, most showing signs of precision plasma fire. He made his way deeper into the compound, toward Kuran's personal chambers. The attackers had been thorough, eliminating any resistance they encountered. Felix moved cautiously, his Deathworlder senses alert for any threat. A faint sound drew his attention, a subtle movement behind a collapsed section of wall. Felix approached, weapon ready, only to find Kuran herself, injured but alive. A plasma burn had scorched her left side, and one of her 6 eyes was swollen shut. "Felix," she whispered. "They came, without warning." "Who?" Felix asked, helping her to a more secure position. "Unknown. Professional. Military precision." She winced in pain. "They weren't after me. They took something. From the vault." "What did they take?" Kuran's remaining eyes focused on him. "Data crystals. Records of all Shadowbane operations in the Kepler Rim." Felix frowned. "Why would anyone want that? To expose us? To blackmail us?" "I don't know." She gripped his arm with surprising strength. "But without those records, we are vulnerable. Every agent, every operation, every alliance, all compromised." "We need to get you medical attention," Felix said, noting her deteriorating condition. "No," she insisted. "No time. You must warn Valeth. If they came for my data." The realization hit Felix like a physical blow. "They'll go after hers too." "Precisely," Kuran coughed, a violet fluid speckling her lips. "If both our organizations fall simultaneously, someone else moves in to fill the vacuum." Felix finished her thought. "The same someone who's been orchestrating the conflict between you." "Help me up," Kuran demanded. "I'm coming with you." "You're injured." "I can still fight," she insisted. "And Valeth needs to hear this from me, not just you." Recognizing the determination in her voice, Felix helped the Nilarian to her feet. They made their way out through a secret exit that bypassed the security cordon. "We'll need to move quickly and stay out of sight," Felix said as they entered the maintenance tunnels that ran throughout the station. "If whoever attacked your compound realizes you survived, they'll send more assassins," Kuran agreed grimly. "But I am not easy prey, even wounded." As if to demonstrate, she produced a slender energy weapon from a hidden pocket in her garments. The device hummed with lethal potential. "You said the attackers had military precision," Felix noted as they navigated the dimly lit tunnels. "Could they be actual military? Peacekeepers, perhaps?" Kuran's expression darkened. "Peacekeepers maintain a presence in the Kepler Rim, but they typically avoid direct confrontation with organizations like mine. They prefer to maintain the illusion of control while allowing the natural balance of power to regulate criminal activity. Unless someone within their ranks has a different agenda, Felix suggested. Before Karan could respond, Felix's comm unit buzzed. It was Torvin. Felix, where are you? Have you heard about the attack on the Shadowbane compound? I am aware, Felix replied cautiously. I'm pursuing some leads. You need to be careful, Torvin urged. I've received reports that similar attacks are being planned against other syndicate holdings across the station. The situation is escalating beyond a simple turf war. Who's behind it? Felix demanded. I don't know, the fixer admitted. But rumors suggest involvement from someone high in the Galactic peacekeeping force. Someone with resources and a grudge against organized crime in the Rim. Keep your ears open, Felix instructed. I'll contact you when I can. As he ended the communication, Karan studied him with her remaining functional eyes. You suspect this goes beyond Nexus Prime. I think someone is deliberately destabilizing the entire Kepler Rim, Felix confirmed. And they're using the conflict between you and Valeth as cover for a much larger operation. They continued through the maintenance tunnels, occasionally having to detour around security checkpoints or repair crews responding to the chaos. Felix's intimate knowledge of the station's layout proved invaluable, allowing them to make progress toward the western quadrant without being detected. As they approached Void Star territory, they encountered increasing signs of disorder. Emergency teams rushed past them, heading toward what appeared to be another site of violence. We're too late, Karan murmured. They've already hit Valeth's compound. Felix accessed a public terminal to check the station's alert system. Multiple explosions reported in the western quadrant. Void Star headquarters under attack by unknown forces. We need to find Valeth, Karan insisted. If she's dead, any hope of uncovering the truth dies with her. They changed course, heading toward a secondary Void Star facility that Karan knew of through her intelligence network. The journey was arduous, with Karan's condition deteriorating despite her stubborn determination. By the time they reached the hidden complex, the Nylarian was leaning heavily on Felix for support. The facility appeared untouched by the violence elsewhere, but security was on high alert. As they approached, weapons were immediately trained on them. Hold your fire, came a familiar crystalline voice. Valeth emerged from the shadows, her normally immaculate appearance disheveled. What is the meaning of this? Seeing Karan's injured state, her expression shifted from suspicion to confusion. Why bring her here? Is this some kind of trick? No trick, Felix assured her. Your headquarters was attacked. So was hers. I believe the same forces are responsible for both. Valeth's frills rippled with agitation. My people reported the attack. I ordered an evacuation before they could breach our main vault. Were they after your data crystals? Karan asked weakly. The Syraxian's eyes widened. How did you know? Because they took mine, Karan replied. All our operations, all our agents, compromised. Valeth hissed, a rare display of genuine emotion from the normally composed crime lord. This is no coincidence. No, Felix agreed. Someone wants both your organizations crippled. They've been manipulating you, turning you against each other while positioning themselves to take control once you've weakened each other sufficiently. Valeth gestured for her guards to stand down. Bring her inside. We have medical facilities. As Karan received treatment, Felix and Valeth reviewed what they knew. The attacks had been coordinated and executed with military precision. Both targeted data vaults containing sensitive information about syndicate operations. And both occurred shortly after Felix had begun investigating the conflict between the two organizations. My sources in the Peacekeepers have been silent, Valeth said, pacing the secure conference room. That's unusual. They're typically eager to sell information when credits are offered. My contacts mentioned rumors of Peacekeeper involvement, Felix noted. Someone high-ranking with a vendetta against Rim syndicates. Valeth's expression hardened. There's only one person who fits that description. Deputy Director Arcturus Vane. He's been pushing for a more aggressive stance against what he calls criminal elements in the outer systems. The timing matches, Felix mused. You said the conflicts between your organizations escalated about 8 months ago. Yes, shortly after Vane was appointed to oversee rim security. Kuran entered the room, her wounds treated, but still moving gingerly. Vane visited Nexus Prime, shortly before our first major confrontation with Void Star. He met with Administrator Quillen. Quillen, Felix repeated, remembering the nervous Tesseran. He seemed uncomfortable when I asked who might benefit from your conflict. We need proof, Valeth stated. Accusations against a Peacekeeper Deputy Director require irrefutable evidence. The data crystals they stole, Felix suggested. If we could recover them, would they contain anything that might implicate Vane? Kuran and Valeth exchanged glances. Possibly, Kuran admitted. My records include all communications with officials, including peacekeepers, seeking bribes or offering information. Mine as well, Valeth added. But the crystals could be anywhere by now. Not anywhere, Felix corrected. If Vane is behind this, he'd want the data secure but accessible. There's a peacekeeper outpost on the station's northern arm. That would be the logical place to temporarily store sensitive material before transferring it off-station. The outpost is heavily guarded, Valeth warned. Even with our combined forces, a frontal assault would be suicide. Who said anything about a frontal assault? Felix grinned. I have another idea. Felix's plan was audacious but feasible. Using Kuran's remaining agents and Valeth's technical specialists, they would create a diversion in the southern quadrant, far from both the Peacekeeper outpost and their current location. Meanwhile, Felix, Kuran, and Valeth would infiltrate the outpost through maintenance shafts that ran beneath it. My people have a partial schematic of the facility, Valeth said, displaying a holographic map. The secure storage area is here, on the 3rd level. Security protocols? Felix asked. Standard Peacekeeper configurations, retinal scanners, motion sensors, armed guards on rotation. Kuran studied the map. We can handle the electronic security, but the guards will be a problem. Leave them to me, Felix assured her. I've dealt with Peacekeeper security before. As they finalized their preparations, Felix noticed something odd about the outpost's layout. This ventilation system. It's oversized for a facility of this type. Valeth examined the area he indicated. You're right. The specifications are military grade, not standard for an administrative outpost. It's a black site, Kuran realized, disguised as a regular Peacekeeper facility, but designed for covert operations, which makes it even more likely our data is there, Felix concluded. They'd want it in their most secure location. 3 hours later, their plan was in motion. Reports of a massive chemical spill in the southern quadrant drew emergency responders and security personnel from across the station. In the ensuing chaos, Felix, Kuran, and Valeth slipped into the maintenance tunnels beneath the Peacekeeper outpost. These tunnels aren't on any official station schematics, Felix explained, as he led them through the narrow passages. They were added during an undocumented retrofit about 5 years ago. Most station personnel don't even know they exist. How do you know about them? Valeth asked suspiciously. Felix smiled grimly. I helped install them. Another job, another lifetime. They reached a point directly beneath the outpost's secure storage area. Felix produced a compact cutting tool and began working on the reinforced flooring above them. This will take time, he warned. The material is designed to resist exactly this kind of intrusion. Kuran kept watch, while Valeth monitored station communications through a portable terminal. The diversion is working, the Syraxian reported. Peacekeeper chatter indicates they've dispatched units to the southern quadrant. Good, Felix grunted as he continued cutting. That should thin out the security inside. After 20 tense minutes, Felix had created an opening large enough for them to pass through. He went first, using a compact sensor to check for immediate threats before signaling the others to follow. They emerged in a storage room filled with mundane supplies, nothing that would indicate the facility's true purpose. Felix led them to the door and carefully checked the corridor beyond. It was empty. "Third level," he reminded them. "We need to find an access shaft or stairwell." They moved cautiously through the outpost, avoiding the main corridors where possible. The facility was indeed operating with reduced personnel, but they still encountered the occasional guard or technician. In these instances, Kuran's empathic abilities proved invaluable, allowing her to sense nearby presences before they became visible. They located a service ladder that would take them to the third level. As they climbed, Valeth's comm unit vibrated silently. She checked it and hissed in concern. "The diversion has been contained," she whispered. "Security teams are returning to their posts." "We need to move faster," Felix urged. The third level was noticeably different from the lower floors. The utilitarian aesthetic of a standard peacekeeper facility gave way to more advanced technology and heightened security. Scanning devices were positioned at regular intervals along the corridors. "The storage vault should be this way," Valeth indicated, consulting the schematic she had memorized. They approached a heavy security door marked with the peacekeeper emblem. A retinal scanner guarded access to the room beyond. "Now what?" Kuran asked. "None of us will pass a peacekeeper retinal scan." Felix reached into a pocket and produced a small device. Universal bypass module. It won't fool the system for long, but it should give us a few minutes. He attached the device to the scanner. It hummed quietly as it processed the security protocols, then emitted a soft beep as the door slid open. The vault beyond was a testament to peacekeeper paranoia. Row upon row of secure containers lined the walls, each requiring separate authentication. In the center of the room stood a specialized data terminal, currently active. "Someone's been accessing the data recently," Valeth observed, approaching the terminal. "Perhaps within the hour." Felix scanned the container labels, searching for anything that might contain the stolen data crystals. "Here," he called, pointing to a container marked with a code that matched the date of the attacks. Kuran examined the security lock. "This is beyond my expertise." "Mine too," Felix admitted. "We'll have to take the entire container." "It's too heavy to move quickly," Valeth objected. "Then we'll access it here." Felix drew his plasma pistol and adjusted the setting to its lowest output. With surgical precision, he began cutting around the container's locking mechanism. "Hurry," Kuran urged, keeping watch at the door. "I sense multiple presences approaching." Felix completed the cut and the container's front panel fell away, revealing dozens of data crystals arranged in padded compartments. "Which ones are yours?" Kuran and Valeth quickly identified their respective data crystals by their distinctive markings. But there was something else in the container, a set of crystals neither recognized. "These aren't mine," Kuran said, examining the unfamiliar crystals. "Nor mine," Valeth confirmed. Felix grabbed them anyway. "If they're stored with your stolen data, they must be important." An alarm blared suddenly, its harsh sound filling the vault. "Security breach detected," announced an automated voice. "Lockdown protocols initiated." "We need to go," Felix shouted over the alarm. "Now!" They raced for the exit, only to find the door beginning to close as part of the lockdown procedure. Felix wedged his body into the gap, using his Deathworlder strength to hold it open long enough for Kuran and Valeth to slip through. He followed at the last possible moment, the door grazing his back as it sealed shut. The corridor was bathed in red emergency lighting. Ahead, they could hear the sound of approaching security personnel. "This way," Valeth hissed, leading them down a side passage. "There's a maintenance access point that should bypass the main security checkpoints." They had almost reached the access point when a plasma bolt sizzled past Felix's head, impacting the wall with a shower of sparks. He turned to see a squad of peacekeeper troops in full combat gear advancing toward them. "Go!" he shouted to Kuran and Valeth. "Get the data to safety. I'll hold them off. Don't be a fool, Karan snapped. You can't fight an entire security team. Watch me, Felix grinned, taking cover behind a structural support beam. The peacekeepers approached cautiously, their weapons trained on Felix's position. He waited until they were committed to their advance, then fired a precise shot that struck a ceiling-mounted fire suppression system. Instantly, the corridor was filled with a dense, obscuring foam that disoriented the pursuing troops. In the confusion, Felix rejoined Karan and Valeth at the maintenance access point. They descended quickly, finding themselves once again in the network of tunnels beneath the outpost. We need to get off the station, Felix said as they moved through the narrow passages. Once they discover what we've taken, they'll lock down every transport. I have a private vessel docked in a secure bay, Valeth offered. My people can have it ready for departure within the hour. Too risky, Karan countered. They'll be watching all known syndicate assets. We need something untraceable. Felix considered their options. Torvin. He specializes in discreet transport for clients who need to disappear quickly. Can he be trusted? Valeth asked skeptically. No, Felix admitted. But he's motivated by profit, not loyalty. And right now, helping us is his most profitable option. Felix contacted Torvin through a secure channel. The fixer was understandably nervous about assisting fugitives from peacekeeper justice, but the promise of exclusive future contracts from both syndicates, plus an exorbitant immediate payment, secured his cooperation. Bay 94, Level 7, Torvin instructed. A cargo hauler registered to an agricultural collective. The pilot knows to expect you. Departure window is 20 minutes. After that, you're on your own. They made their way to the specified bay, avoiding main corridors and security checkpoints. The station was in a state of high alert, with announcements warning of dangerous fugitives at large. Their descriptions were not provided, suggesting the peacekeepers wanted to handle the situation quietly. The cargo hauler was an ancient vessel, its hull scarred from decades of service. It looked barely spaceworthy, which was precisely why it was perfect. No one would suspect it of carrying high-value fugitives. The pilot, a grizzled Floxian with mottled skin and 4 eyes, greeted them with a grunt. You're the special cargo? Stow yourselves in the hold and stay quiet. Inspections routine on departure. They complied, concealing themselves among containers of synthetic fertilizer. The cramped, pungent environment was unpleasant, but effective as a hiding place. Through the thin walls of the hold, they could hear the muffled sounds of the departure process, engines powering up, clearance being requested, the clank of the docking clamps releasing. Then came the expected complication. Cargo hauler fertile soil. This is Nexus Prime Security. Stand by for inspection before departure. Felix tensed, his hand moving to his weapon. Beside him, Karan and Valeth did the same. If they were discovered, there would be no option but to fight, a battle they were unlikely to win. The inspector's footsteps echoed through the hold as they made their way among the cargo containers. Felix could see a shadow through a gap in their hiding place, a uniformed figure moving methodically through the area, scanning each container. The shadow paused directly outside their position. Felix held his breath, every muscle coiled for action. "Sir," came a voice from the entrance to the hold. "Priority alert from command. All inspection personnel are to report to the northern quadrant immediately. Some kind of situation at the peacekeeper outpost." The inspector hesitated, then responded. "Understood. Inspection of this vessel will have to wait." The footsteps receded, and moments later, they felt the subtle shift as the hauler detached from the station and maneuvered away. They had escaped Nexus Prime. Once they were safely in transit, the pilot informed them that their destination was an unmanned refueling station in a nearby asteroid belt, a location frequently used by those wishing to transfer between vessels without official documentation. In the relative security of the cargo hold, they examined their stolen data crystals. Karan and Valeth confirmed that their respective organizational records appeared intact. But the unknown crystals remained a mystery. "We need a secure terminal to access these," Felix said, turning one of the mysterious crystals in his hand. "Something isolated from any network that might be monitored." "The refueling station should have basic equipment," Valeth suggested. "Nothing sophisticated, but enough to read standard data formats." "And if these aren't standard?" Karan asked. Felix smiled grimly. "Then we improvise." The journey to the refueling station took several hours, during which they took turns resting, while one remained on watch. Felix used the time to piece together what they knew. Arcturus Vane, a high-ranking peacekeeper, had systematically orchestrated conflicts between criminal organizations across the Kepler Rim. The timing coincided with his appointment as deputy director for Rim Security. And now he had attempted to acquire comprehensive data on syndicate operations throughout the sector. "The question is why," Felix mused aloud. If his goal was to destroy criminal organizations, why work so hard to acquire their operational data, rather than simply eliminating their leadership? Because destruction isn't his goal, Valeth realized. Control is. Exactly, Karan agreed. He doesn't want to end criminal operations in the Rim. He wants to take them over. A peacekeeper running a criminal empire. Felix shook his head at the audacity of it. Using his position to eliminate competition while establishing his own network. It's brilliant, in a twisted way, Valeth admitted. Who would suspect the very person tasked with fighting crime of being its mastermind? We need proof, Felix insisted. Something concrete that links Vane to the attacks and the broader conspiracy. If we're right about these unknown data crystals, Karan said, they might contain exactly that. The refueling station was little more than a collection of pressurized modules attached to a hollowed-out asteroid. It was automated for the most part, with minimal staff who were accustomed to asking no questions of their clientele. They secured a private module and set about examining the mysterious data crystals. As expected, the station's equipment was rudimentary, but Felix's technical skills proved sufficient to jury-rig a reader capable of accessing the crystal's contents. What they found exceeded their wildest expectations. The crystals contained detailed records of Vane's operation, communications with corrupt officials, transfer orders for troops and resources, financial transactions with shell companies, and most damning of all, a comprehensive plan for establishing control over criminal enterprises throughout the Kepler Rim. This is it, Felix said, his voice tight with controlled excitement. Everything we need to expose him. But how do we use it? Karan asked. Vane controls the peacekeepers in this sector. Any official channel would lead back to him. We don't use official channels, Valeth stated. We use your contacts. And mine. Every syndicate leader in the Rim has a stake in this. Felix nodded slowly. A coalition against Vane. But will they believe us? Trust us enough to unite? They will when they see this evidence, Karan insisted. And when they realize the alternative is submission to Vane's control. We need a secure location for a summit, Felix said, already formulating a plan. Somewhere off the grid but accessible to syndicate leaders. Valeth's frills rippled in what Felix had learned to recognize as amusement. I know just the place. An asteroid mining facility abandoned when the ore ran out. My people converted it into a safe house years ago. Can you arrange transport there without being detected? Felix asked. For a small group. Yes. But gathering syndicate leaders from across the Rim without attracting attention will be challenging. Leave that to me, Karan interjected. My people are experts at discreet movement of high-value individuals. Felix studied both matriarchs, noting the transformation in their relationship. Where once there had been hostility and suspicion, now there was a wary respect and common purpose. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it was a foundation upon which something more substantial could be built. Then we have a plan, he concluded. Valeth arranges our transport to the safe house. Quran coordinates the arrival of syndicate representatives, and I prepare a presentation of the evidence that will convince even the most skeptical among them. The abandoned mining facility was a marvel of adaptation. What had once been industrial chambers for processing ore had been transformed into comfortable living quarters and meeting spaces. The facility's isolation was its greatest security feature. Approach vectors were limited and easily monitored, while the surrounding asteroid field provided natural cover from scanning. Over the next 48 hours, representatives from 7 major criminal organizations arrived at the facility. Some came willingly, intrigued by the promise of revelatory information. Others required persuasion, skeptical of any initiative that involved cooperation with rivals. Felix observed the arrivals with interest, noting the diversity of species and operations represented. The Shadowbane Syndicate and Void Star Cartel were the largest organizations present, but the others were significant in their own right. The Nova Combine, specialists in technological theft; the Crimson Path, experts in smuggling rare artifacts; the Obsidian Network, information brokers without peer; the Silent Hand, assassins of legendary skill; and the Quantum Consortium, financial manipulators who controlled black markets across 3 sectors. When all had assembled in the facility's central chamber, a repurposed ore separation room, now furnished as a conference hall, Felix took center stage. Behind him, a massive display showed a rotating hologram of the Kepler rim, with affected systems highlighted. "Thank you for coming," he began. "I know many of you took considerable risks to be here, and some of you still doubt the purpose of this gathering. I'll be direct. Deputy Director Arcturus Vane of the Galactic Peacekeepers has been orchestrating conflicts between your organizations as part of a systematic plan to destroy or absorb your operations and establish his own criminal empire across the Kepler rim." Murmurs spread through the assembled representatives. Some expressed disbelief, others anger. "This is absurd," growled the Nova Combine representative, a cybernetically enhanced Ursoid. "Why would a peacekeeper risk his position for criminal enterprises he could never openly control?" "Because control doesn't require visibility," Felix countered. "It only requires leverage. And what better leverage than the threat of peacekeeper intervention, backed by comprehensive knowledge of your operations?" He activated the display, showing fragments of Vane's communications and plans. The evidence was damning. Detailed strategies for destabilizing each organization present, followed by steps to absorb their assets and personnel. "This data was retrieved from a Peacekeeper Black site on Nexus Prime," Felix explained. "It contains Vane's entire operation, every corrupt official on his payroll, every shell company he controls, every planned conflict designed to weaken your organizations." The Silent Hand representative, a slender, shadowy figure whose species was impossible to determine beneath their concealing robes, spoke in a whisper that nonetheless carried throughout the room. "If this is true, why bring us together? Why not sell this information to the highest bidder?" "Because defeating Vane requires unity," Quran answered, stepping forward to stand beside Felix. "No single organization has the resources to oppose him. But together we can not only expose his corruption, but seize the opportunity to reshape the balance of power in the rim." Valeth completed the thought, joining them. The Quantum Consortium representative, a Tesseran-like Administrator Quillen, but with calculating eyes that betrayed a sharper intelligence, leaned forward. "You propose an alliance? Between rivals who have spent decades trying to eliminate each other?" "A temporary coalition with clearly defined goals," Felix clarified. "Expose Vane, neutralize his operation, protect your respective territories from absorption. Once those objectives are achieved, you return to business as usual, but with clear boundaries and mutual understanding." The discussion that followed was heated, with old grievances and suspicions threatening to derail the proposed alliance before it could form. Felix observed with growing concern as the representatives split into factions. arguing over past transgressions rather than focusing on the immediate threat. It was Valeth who finally silenced the discord. "Enough!" Her crystalline voice cut through the noise like a blade. "While you bicker over past insults, Vane consolidates his position. The attacks on Nexus Prime were just the beginning. According to his timetable, 3 more organizations will be targeted within the week." That sobered the assembly. The Crimson Path representative, a scarlet-skinned Volocris with iridescent wings folded tightly against their back, asked, "Which 3? The Nova Combine, the Obsidian Network, and the Silent Hand?" Felix revealed, displaying the relevant section of Vane's plan. Representatives from the named organizations exchanged alarmed glances. The threat was no longer theoretical, but imminent and personal. "What do you propose?" asked the Obsidian Network representative, a Myraxian whose translucent skin revealed the complex neural patterns beneath. Felix outlined a 3-phase strategy. First, coordinated strikes against Vane's communication hubs and data centers to disrupt his command structure. Second, exposure of his corruption through simultaneous data dumps to every major news outlet in the sector. Third, a strategic realignment of territories and operations to fill the vacuum left by Vane's fall. "Each organization contributes according to its strengths," he explained. "The Silent Hand provides assassination expertise for key targets. The Nova Combine handles technological disruption. The Obsidian Network manages information distribution. The Quantum Consortium freezes Vane's financial assets. The Crimson Path secures escape routes and safe houses. And Shadowbane and Void Star provide the combat forces for direct confrontation." The plan was ambitious, but feasible. After hours of negotiation, adjustments, and compromise, the 7 organizations reached an agreement. The Kepler Rim Criminal Coalition was formed, a name that would never appear in any official record, but would, for a brief but crucial period, represent the most powerful alliance in the sector. As the representatives dispersed to communicate the plan to their respective organizations, Felix found himself alone with Quran and Valeth in a small observation dome that offered a spectacular view of the surrounding asteroid field. "Will it work?" Quran asked softly, her 6 eyes reflecting the distant starlight. "It has to," Felix replied. "The alternative is submission to Vane or mutual destruction." "And afterward?" Valeth inquired. "When Vane is dealt with and the coalition dissolves?" Felix turned to face both matriarchs. "That depends on what you want. Return to the old ways of constant conflict, or something new?" "Something new," Quran mused. "A balance, not peace exactly. But coordination, respect for boundaries, mutual benefit where possible." "It could work," Valeth admitted. "With the right mediator." Both crime queens looked at Felix expectantly. He laughed. "Are you offering me a job?" "A position," Valeth corrected. "Advisor to the newly established Kepler Rim Syndicate Council. Neutral arbiter of disputes. Strategic consultant. And protector," Quran added. "The face of our collective security." Felix hadn't expected this. He'd anticipated a substantial payment upon completion of the mission. Perhaps ongoing contracts as needed, but not a permanent role within the criminal hierarchy of the Kepler Rim. It was unprecedented and intriguing. "I'll consider it," he promised. "After we deal with Vane." The Coalition's first strikes occurred simultaneously across 3 systems. Vane's primary communication relay on Axion 4 was disabled by a Nova Combine cyber attack that left no trace of the intrusion. His financial accounts on Meridian Station were frozen by Quantum Consortium operatives, who replaced the funds with untraceable cryptographic tokens. And his data center on Helios Prime was physically destroyed in a precision strike led by Silent Hand assassins, who eliminated the facility's security with surgical efficiency. The disruption created the opening they needed for Phase 2. The Obsidian Network activated its web of informants and media contacts, flooding every news channel, social feed, and government information portal with evidence of Vane's corruption. The data was presented in digestible formats tailored to different audiences: financial impropriety for corporate interests, abuse of power for political entities, and direct threats to public safety for the general population. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Government officials scrambled to distance themselves from Vane. Corporate partners severed ties and issued denials of knowledge. And within the peacekeeper hierarchy, an internal investigation was launched that quickly expanded to include Vane's entire command structure. Vane himself was reportedly furious, issuing orders for immediate retaliation against suspected sources of the leaks. But his command structure had been too severely compromised. Many of his loyal officers were already detained by internal affairs, while others had gone into hiding to avoid association with his increasingly toxic reputation. In a desperate move, Vane mobilized his remaining loyal forces for a direct assault on Nexus Prime, the station where his plans had first been exposed. He apparently believed that recapturing or destroying the original data crystals would somehow stem the tide of revelations. This played directly into the Coalition's strategy. Phase 3 called for a concentrated defense of key locations, drawing Vane's forces into positions where they could be isolated and neutralized. Nexus Prime, with its strategic importance and symbolic value, was the perfect bait. Felix, Kuran, and Valeth coordinated the station's defense from a secure command center established in the previously abandoned maintenance tunnels. Representatives from each coalition member were present, each managing their organization's contribution to the defensive effort. Vane's fleet has entered the system, reported the Obsidian Network representative. 6 vessels, military-grade but with identification transponders disabled. Composition? Felix asked. 1 command cruiser, 3 escort frigates, 2 troop carriers, approximately 500 combat personnel total. Kuran's expression was grim. A significant force for a supposedly disgraced officer. He still has supporters in the military hierarchy, Valeth noted. Those who benefit from his operations or fear exposure themselves. Are our forces in position? Felix asked. The Silent Hand representative nodded. Assassination teams have infiltrated all 6 vessels. They await your signal. Nova Combine cyber warfare specialists have established backdoor access to their navigation and life support systems, added the Ursoid representative. And our own combat units? Felix turned to Kuran and Valeth. 300 Shadowbane operatives are stationed throughout the station's eastern quadrant, Kuran confirmed, ready to repel boarding parties. Void Star has a similar presence in the western quadrant, Valeth added. Plus 2 concealed cruisers in the station's shadow, ready to engage if necessary. Felix studied the tactical display, considering their options. Our objective isn't to destroy Vane's forces, but to capture him alive. His testimony will be valuable in dismantling what remains of his network. The command cruiser is the key, said the Crimson Path representative. Our intelligence suggests Vane will remain there, directing operations rather than leading the boarding parties personally. Then we focus our efforts there, Felix decided. Silent Hand teams eliminate the cruiser's bridge crew, but leave Vane unharmed. Nova Combine disables the vessel's engines and weapons, and a joint Shadowbane Void Star strike team boards to secure Vane himself. The plan was executed with precision. As Vane's fleet approached Nexus Prime, the Silent Hand assassins struck simultaneously on all 6 vessels, eliminating key personnel and creating confusion in the command structure. The Nova Combine's cyber attack followed, shutting down critical systems and isolating the command cruiser from its escorts. With the fleet in disarray, the hidden Void Star cruisers emerged from the station's shadow, positioning themselves to intercept any attempt at retreat. Shadowbane and Void Star operatives launched from the station in boarding craft, heading directly for the now vulnerable command cruiser. Felix led the boarding party personally, accompanied by a select team of the most skilled combatants from both syndicates. They breached the cruiser's hull at a maintenance access point, bypassing the main hangar, where the remaining security forces were concentrated. The interior of the vessel was in chaos. Emergency lighting cast a red glow over corridors filled with panicked crew members. Most surrendered immediately upon seeing the boarding party, having no loyalty to Vane beyond their paychecks. Those who resisted were quickly neutralized by Felix's team. They fought their way to the bridge, expecting to find Vane there, despite the Silent Hand's elimination of the command staff. But the bridge was empty, save for the bodies of officers who had remained at their posts until the end. "Where is he?" Karan demanded, scanning the area with all 6 of her eyes. "The private quarters," Valeth suggested. Officers of his rank typically have a secure suite near the bridge. They located the quarters, a surprisingly modest compartment given Vane's apparent ambitions. The door was sealed, but a Nova Combine specialist in their party made quick work of the lock. Inside, they found Arcturus Vane, not cowering or preparing for a last stand, but calmly seated at a desk, reviewing data on a personal terminal. He was a Terran, like Felix, but older, with silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. His peacekeeper uniform was immaculate despite the chaos that had engulfed his vessel. He looked up as they entered, his expression one of mild irritation rather than fear. "Mr. Felix," he said, recognizing the mercenary. "I should have paid you more to leave Nexus Prime when I had the chance." "Deputy Director Vane," Felix acknowledged, keeping his weapon trained on the man. "You're under arrest for corruption, conspiracy, multiple counts of murder, and attempted establishment of a criminal enterprise." Vane actually laughed. "Under whose authority? You represent criminals, not law enforcement. The evidence of your crimes has been distributed to every major governmental body in the sector," Karan informed him, "including Peacekeeper Central Command. They've issued orders for your detention pending formal charges." "Ah," Vane nodded, seemingly untroubled. "So, I'm to be the sacrificial lamb, the corrupt officer who went rogue, allowing the system to cleanse itself by denouncing me while continuing business as usual." "You sound like you expected this outcome," Valeth observed. "Expected? No. Prepared for? Absolutely." Vane gestured to his terminal. "I've been transferring funds to secure accounts since the first news of the data breach. Enough to disappear comfortably if necessary." "That won't be happening," Felix assured him. "Perhaps not." Vane's calm demeanor never wavered. "But neither will the real change you seem to think you've achieved. The system that allowed me to operate will remain intact. The corrupt officials I worked with will find new partners. The power vacuum in the Rim will be filled, if not by your coalition, then by some other ambitious individual." "Maybe," Felix acknowledged, "but not by you." They secured Vane and transferred him to a detention cell on one of the Void Star cruisers. The remainder of his fleet surrendered once it became clear their commander had been captured and their systems compromised. The aftermath of Vane's capture unfolded rapidly. True to his prediction, Peacekeeper Central Command publicly denounced him as a rogue officer whose actions did not reflect the organization's values or policies. An official inquiry was announced, though few expected it to implicate anyone of significance beyond Vane himself. More importantly for the newly formed coalition, Vane's fall created the opportunity they had been waiting for. A chance to reshape the criminal landscape of the Kepler Rim according to their own design. The Kepler Rim Syndicate Council, as it came to be known, established clear territories and spheres of influence for each member organization, minimizing the potential for future conflicts. Felix found himself at the center of this new order, his role evolving from mercenary to advisor to de facto head of security for the entire coalition. It was a position without precedent, commanding respect from even the most hardened criminal leaders. 3 months after Vane's capture, Felix stood on an observation deck of Nexus Prime, watching as ships from across the sector docked at the now prosperous station. The turf war that had dominated life here was a distant memory, replaced by a regulated system of operation that benefited all parties. Kuran and Valeth joined him. Their once bitter rivalry transformed into a complex relationship that combined professional respect with personal connection. Neither would ever fully trust the other, but they had learned to work together effectively, and perhaps something more. The Obsidian Network reports increased peacekeeper activity in the outer colonies, Kuran informed him. Apparently, some of Vane's former associates have established a new operation there. Beyond our current territory, Valeth noted, but potentially a threat if allowed to grow unchecked. Felix nodded thoughtfully. Then, we'll need to expand our influence. Carefully, strategically. We? Kuran asked, a hint of amusement in her voice. Have you finally accepted our offer, then? Felix looked out at the stars beyond the station, considering the path that had brought him here, and the one that stretched before him. He had come to Nexus Prime as a mercenary, a hired gun with no stake in the outcome beyond his payment. Now, he found himself deeply invested in the future of the Rim and its newly established order. Yes, he decided. I accept. Valeth's crystalline skin shimmered with satisfaction. Then it settled. The Kepler Rim Syndicate Council has its protector. And advisor, Kuran added. We'll need your strategic insight for what's coming. And what is coming? Felix asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Both matriarchs looked out at the stars, their expressions resolute. War, Valeth stated simply. The real war for the Rim, against those who would follow in Vane's footsteps. But this time, Kuran added, we face it united. Felix nodded, feeling the weight of his new role and the responsibility it entailed. The scars that lined his body, testament to countless battles survived against impossible odds, would likely be joined by new ones before this was over. But for the first time in his life as a mercenary, he was fighting for something beyond mere survival or payment. He was fighting for a vision of the future, one shaped by unlikely allies who had found common purpose in the face of manipulation and betrayal. It wasn't peace, exactly, but it was a balance, a new order forged in the crucible of necessity. And as the distant stars twinkled through Nexus Prime's transparent aluminum viewports, Felix knew that the real challenge had only just begun.